In the spirit of the holiday, I made a St. Patrick's Day animated graphic, and this is how I created it. Going through Motion Array, I gathered all the elements that would be needed to compose the graphic. The main elements that I would need would include a background, some playful text, and other elements like a pot of gold and a green leprechaun hat. The only thing that I needed to change was the text, which was originally green, but I changed it to have a gold texture to give contrast from the text to the background. The text would be the main element to animate, and since the text I downloaded was its own element, I had to separate each word as their own layer. This would enable me to animate each word individually in After Effects. After composing the graphic, it was now time to animate. I imported the Photoshop file into After Effects. Now when importing the file, I'm going to go to Import Options, Composition, Retain Layer Sizes. This will import the file as a composition, and I will have all the layers that I worked on in Photoshop available to manipulate and move around. This is important since I will be animating most of the elements in the graphic. Then once I import the file, a box will pop up in After Effects for layer options. I'm going to want to click on the option for editable layer styles. This is just another option that I will have to go through to make sure that the Photoshop layers are attainable, enabling me to, again, manipulate and move around. Now I will see in the project area of After Effects a composition of my Photoshop graphic and a folder that will contain all the elements as individual layers. But in this case, I'll be working with the composition, which is where all my work and layers will be displayed in the way that I organize them in Photoshop. I'm going to start animating the background, and in this piece I want to have the clovers in the background to move from one side to the other. I'm going to select the background layer along with other layers at the bottom and pre-compose these elements to be one layer in the main composition, titling it as BKG. This is just so that I free up some space in the layers section. Next, I'm going to animate the text. When creating the graphic in Photoshop, I tiled the pattern of clovers and made this background bigger than the dimensions of the overall graphic, which will allow for some wiggle room. I'm going to select the background layer and then press P, shortcut for position. This will open up the position parameters in the background layer. I'm going to then add a keyframe at the very beginning, then go to the very end of the timeline and move the background to the right, moving it at a bit of a diagonal for artistic reasons. The diagonal movement, I think, will add a different dynamic, rather than just moving the background vertically straight. So now we have the background slowly moving from side to side. In the Photoshop file, I separated the text to have each word as their own layer, and the purpose of this is because I wanted to animate each word. All of them essentially just doing the same thing, a scale up from 0 to 100, but each of them having just a bit of a different animation to them, such as adding rotation or a different percentage number in the scale keyframes. Starting on the word happy, select the layer and press S to open up the scale. I'm going to add a keyframe in the beginning, setting the starting keyframe to 0 and then go forward about 7 frames and set a keyframe here with a scale set to 110%. Then go forward again about 3 frames and set the keyframe to 100%. By setting the last 2 keyframes the way I did with the 110% overscaled and then going to 100%, this will give the impression of the text pushing too far forward and then positioning itself. I think this just gives a bit more realism rather than just going from start to finish. There's a start, middle, and end, if that makes sense. Next, I'm going to add the ease out at the start of the frame and then the ease in at the end of the frame. This will smoothen the animation a bit more, giving the first frame a bit of a slow push and moving fast, and then at the end from fast to slowing down. I'm going to add rotation now to the animation to make it a bit more dynamic in its movement. With the rotation, I'm only going to make 2 keyframes, one at the start and then at the end. I'm going to press R to open up the rotation parameters in the layer and add a keyframe at the beginning. I'll rotate the text at -17% and add the ease out. Using the keyframe that is already there, I'm going to bring the keyframe to the end and line it up with the ending keyframe of scale. After watching the way this rotates, I'm going to move the ending keyframe for rotation a few frames forward so that the text is still finishing up the rotation after the scaling animation ends. So this is essentially how I would animate the rest of the separate text, with the numbers for the rotation differing. Having Patrick's swing in from the left side a bit and Day swing from the right. I would also offset the timing of the animations so that they are falling one after the other, but the animation is starting while one animation is just about to come to its final position. After animating the text, I noticed that when I went back to the main composition with all the other elements in the graphic, in the text composition layer, there was a little dash in the box where I would need to click to add motion blur. With the dash in the box, I wouldn't be able to view the text with motion blur. So I figured I would go back into the text composition and I clicked the motion blur option for all the text layers in this composition. I selected all the text layers and pressed Ctrl-Shift-C to pre-compose and named it Title Comp. And as you can see, the motion blur is working. I would then replace the original text composition with this newly composed title comp. And now you can see the option for motion blur is available, and motion blur is also working in the main composition. Alright, this looks good. Let's move on to the hat and the pot of gold. With these elements, I did something a bit different from the text animations when it comes to the way that I set the scale keyframes. I wanted to give these elements a bit more of a playful sense of how they moved. They have a cartoon feel to the way they were illustrated, so I thought that adding extra keyframes would work in giving them a bit of a bouncy movement. I started the hat animation with the scale, press S to open up the scale parameters, and then add a starting keyframe. This will be set to 0. I then went forward 5 frames to add the next keyframe. This I'm going to set to 125%. Again, this is overextending the first push. Then I'm going to go 3 frames forward and set the keyframe to 90%. This is going to give the push back. I'm going to go 2 frames forward now and set another keyframe at 110%, and then 2 frames forward to end the last keyframe at 100%. I added ease out at the starting keyframe and ease in at the ending keyframe. For the middle keyframes, I would just add an easy ease, which would smoothen the animations with a combination of fast, slow, and fast. I would do the same thing that I did with the hat to the pot of gold. Next, I would be animating the outer elements of the text, the leaf and heart looking elements. At this point, I didn't want to repeat any of the animation techniques, so I went for something more simple. I would just cut the layers of each of the elements to appear suddenly as the overall animation went down the timeline. And lastly, with the clover, again, I wanted to keep it simple, so all I did was keyframe the positions and added keyframes in the opacity parameters to reveal the clover as it moved into its ending position. Lastly, what I wanted to do was add a little shimmering effect to the text to give it the impression that the text had a sheen of some sort. So what I did was create a solid white layer, Ctrl Y to open up the options. A box will pop up and I can title the layer and also choose a color at the bottom of the box. I click the color box to then choose white as the solid color layer. And now with the white layer chosen, I created a mask over this layer. Press Q to create a rectangle mask. I'm going to be moving this mask across the screen to go over the text, so I gave the mask a bit of a slant for aesthetic reasons. I just think that with the slant, it looks better than just a straight slender rectangle moving across the text, as you will see in a bit. I'm going to give the mask some feather and set it to 100. Next, I'm going to use the alpha of the text comp layer to essentially have the white mask move within the text. Go to the bottom of the screen at toggle switch modes, and depending on what options you are seeing at the moment, you will want to go to track mats. Currently, I see that under the track mats, there are no mats. So I'm going to click the box and I will see options with all the layers in the composition. There are a few things that you need to make sure that you do when working with alphas. First, make sure that you have the alpha matte box option clicked, and then whatever layer you are going to be using the alpha for, make sure to duplicate that layer, having the bottom of the duplicate being the layer that you will apply the track matte to. The top layer will be the visible layer. By having all the layers in the right spots, the white mask now looks as if moving across the screen within the text shape. So that's it for today. From creating the graphic to animating the elements, I have an animated graphic for the St. Patrick's Day holiday. I know at this point I'm late in getting this done for the actual holiday, but I thought it would be good to represent the month of March. And overall, the graphic is good as a concept when showing the process for creating a graphic in Photoshop and animating elements in After Effects. If there's anything that I went through today that didn't make sense and you have any questions, please leave a comment down below. I would like to read any input that you have, and it would help me to understand what you guys would like to learn. I make these videos so I can teach and continue to learn myself. So with that, stay tuned for the next video, keep thinking about your next project, and just create it. Alright, I'll see you in the next one. Peace.